Good morning and welcome to High Schools at Work Spotlight, episode number 2. This is a show that focuses on how to be successful by interviewing staff and students and sharing strategies and tips on how to become more successful in life in school and outside of school. And my special guest today is Mr. Chase Rosser. Thanks for being victim number 2 today, and welcome, Chase Rosser.
Thanks for having me.
So the whole purpose of this show is to talk about how to be successful, and so I ask you to prepare a little something about how students can be successful as they, graduate and move on with their life after high school. So, what would you say people should know about success?
I actually picked out 4 words, and the 4 words that when I sat down and thought about this, students that are successful and people that are successful in life, in a career or in college, one, they're dedicated. Everyone has a level of ability, and your ability levels will vary. If you're a musician, you might be just starting out.
Yeah.
And your ability level might not be as high as someone who's been playing for 10 years. But if you have that dedication factor, if you're dedicated, your ability level will grow. And so what happens is, as a student, you may not know physics or calculus, or in my case, government, but if you're dedicated to that and spend time doing that, your ability level can grow in those areas. So successful students, successful people, they're dedicated to what they do. The second thing is they're curious. Curiosity is important. I think a lot of people think that successful students and successful people know everything. They're just know-it-alls. It's actually kind of the opposite of that. Successful people are curious. They ask questions when they don't know the answers to things, rather than just shrugging it off. And they want to know what they don't know. Yeah,
Albert Einstein actually had a famous quote, and I had a poster of it at some point, but it's gone. It said, I don't know everything. I'm only passionately curious.
Yeah, it's so true. And I've learned that people people will say, "Man, you ask a lot of questions," but it's good to. If you don't know the answer to something, it's good to ask questions.
Yeah.
The next thing I said was flexibility. Successful students, successful people are flexible. They're able to adapt. If you're someone who, everything has to be in the right order, life's going to hit, and it's going to be really, really hard to be successful. And so you have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt in any given situation. And the last thing I had was responsibility. Successful people, successful students, successful people in their career take responsibility for their actions. So they don't blame other people. They don't pass the buck. They take full responsibility for the things that they do. So.
Yeah. I think those are great things. Being flexible, change happens. I know Mrs. Lake is going to be on the show next, and she wanted to talk about how to roll with change.
Yeah.
How do you deal as being a teacher? Surely we're it feels like being in a tidal wave sometimes, just being flipped over and flipped over. How do you deal with all that change?
I think you have to take it in strides. So a lot of time, and as a teacher, there's been a lot of changes in the past 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take it all in at once, because if you did, you'd be overwhelmed, and you would be doing a disservice to your students. So I take it slowly. I implement change slowly in my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I try and take it one day, one lesson, one unit at a time. When you're talking about the changes that happen in education, I try not to get overwhelmed by all of them at once.
And you got a lot going on in your life right now.
Yeah.
You got your cell phone on right now. You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, my cell phone's in my pocket at all times right now. My wife is she's 38 and a half weeks pregnant. So we're waiting for our second daughter to come here, so it's a little bit stressful. Honestly, the way I handle that is I make priority lists. I make a list of all the things that I have going on, and just make sure that I'm spending enough time on the things that are most important.
As far as being, how long have you been a teacher?
This is my 6th year teaching.
6th year. So you're definitely, knee deep in this now. What do you find most rewarding about being a teacher?
The most rewarding thing for me is when students say that they cannot do something, and then you see them succeed at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things in the past is I've required students write 5-paragraph essays on tests. And every year students will say, "Oh man, Mr. Rosser, I can't do that. I can't sit down in the 40 minutes and write a 5-paragraph coherent essay." And just seeing them succeed at that, that's my favorite thing about teaching. Most rewarding.
I noticed, this is year 20 for me, and I've noticed the whole "I can't do something" is more popular now than it ever used to be.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Man, that's a good question.
There's no pill for it.
I think you show people they can.
Yeah.
You give them models of people their own age who have done those, done that project, done that assignment, been involved in those things, and you show them that they can, and you guide them through it. You're more of a you're there to walk them through it.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're walking with their learning. What
is it's a hard one to answer, I know, but what's most frustrating about teaching? I guess what's your strengths and weaknesses, or however you want to answer that? What do you find frustrating?
March and April? No, that is a hard question. I think the cookie cutter answer would be all the things that don't deal with instruction in the classroom. But I'm not going to say that. I am going to say, it's getting those students that say, "I can't," to do what they can do. Because a lot of times it's just easier to walk away from that and say, "You're right, you can't do that."
I kind of see that as, if you have a computer and it's on and the green light's on, and that means if I start hitting buttons on this keyboard, things will happen. And if the red light's on, that means if I start hitting buttons on this keyboard, nothing happens. And I think a lot of students come into, especially math classes, with the red light on, knowing that they can't do something.
Right.
And that is, and I'm sure it's that way in every subject. We all have the red lights. Yeah. And I think that's probably the most rewarding thing, as you said, is to get that green light to flip on.
Yeah.
And to make people realize that it is possible to actually learn this stuff. And going back to what you said about dedication, I mean, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Everybody can learn to play the guitar.
Yeah.
Some people will be naturals at it. Others will pick it up very easily. And we sit next to these people in our classrooms.
Yep.
Some people are just great at math, and some have a tough time with it. I'm sure it's that way, again, in every subject. But again, if you're dedicated, you can do it, and you just got to realize that it may take you a little bit longer.
Well, and going off of that with the dedication piece, the guitar player that's more natural, if they don't have the dedication, they're going to plateau.
That's right.
And I think a lot of students think, well, the person I sit next to in math class or the person I sit next to in social studies, they understand this material better than I do. And what they have to understand is if someone is more natural than they are, then they have to give more dedication. And then what ends up happening is that person that it's more natural to, if they don't put in the dedication, they're going to plateau, and those people who are dedicated will surpass them.
Yeah. And the other thing I think people do is they cop out a little bit when they're not a natural and say, well, this isn't fair. And, things aren't fair. And, of course, it's not fair.
Right.
We have to accept the fact that learning stuff, whether it's math or social studies, isn't fair, and not everybody's equal.
It's true.
All right. Now, that was the serious part. And now the super silly part. What is, if you could have, and I think this tells a lot about the soul of a person.
Oh, man.
I know. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, wow.
I mean, right now.
I'd fly.
Yes.
Man, I could go anywhere. I would definitely fly. And I'm an outdoor kind of person. You know, I like to ski and kayak and do things outside. So if I had a superpower, I'd fly. And I would spend a lot of time flying.
Okay. Favorite memory of, say, a birthday or Christmas or childhood memory? One.
My favorite Christmas memory, I'll go with Christmas. It's kind of hard because I have a big family, 20-some cousins. But I'm going to go with a personal family Christmas memory, and it was from the time I was in 4th grade to 6th grade. We had moved school districts, and we were, like, renting houses. And my parents, on Christmas Eve, were like, hey, let's go over to that new house that they were building at the time. There was no carpet, but they had snuck in and put the Christmas tree up. There was no carpet, no furniture, nothing. Just my family, a Christmas tree on wood subflooring, and we had Christmas in our new house that Christmas Eve. It was really cool, you know. It was just my family, so it was probably one of my fondest Christmas memories.
Very good. Last question, and most important. Tell me one quirky thing about yourself. Like something really bizarre. Like for me, it's the sound of someone eating corn on the cob. Drives me crazy. What is one quirky thing about you?
Oh. I like to dance, like
Okay.
like so much that I'll just dance in my kitchen if I have to, you know. Just when I'm alone, sometimes I like to dance.
All right.
Makes me happy.
Thank you, audience, for being here today, and thank you, Mr. Rosser, for being such a good sport about that. I really appreciate it. High Schools That Work Spotlight. I will talk to you soon.